as my talks go, this one's relatively short, but it's still going to take some time to get through, so we'll dig in. I've got a handful of slides, then we'll kind of go live and just do some things and play around there.
Are you recording?
Yeah, we'll be recording it. Yeah, we'll have it on Periscope now, and then we'll have it up later with the video. I don't know if we'll include the slides, because there's not a lot of slides. You'll have the video to watch, certainly, so as we go through. My voice, as you can tell, is a little shot out, but I promise I feel much better than I have the last couple of weeks, so it sounds bad, but I feel pretty good. For those that don't know me, I'm Nicky Mellon with Green Mellon Media, a little agency just off the square. We have some of our ladies with us here today, Brooke and Allie and Ashley. Yeah, we do lots of WordPressy things and love it and enjoy reading these kind of meetups and attending other meetups and all the stuff that goes along with that. For those that aren't familiar, we have allthingswordpress.com to the site with other resources for us. Links to this meetup group if you ever need to find it again, type that in. We also have a Facebook group, a LinkedIn group, and a Google Plus community. The Facebook group is relatively active, the others not so much yet, but we'll still play with it and see. But if you have questions between meetup, that's a good place to pose your questions, and hopefully other people can jump in and help you out. We also have a Slack team we've set up. We're slowly building up. We love Slack in general. We use it a ton at Green Mellon. For this group, we haven't used it a lot yet, but come join us, hang out, kind of a chat with me sort of thing if you have questions there. Just trying to open up any avenue for you to get your questions answered during the month by other folks. So whatever you're most comfortable with. But allthingswordpress.com/Slack, and I'll send you an invite to get in there. Some upcoming stuff. Next week in here, Tom McFarland will be talking business stuff, pressware, publishing, and passion. He's had his own little one-man WordPress development shop for a number of years now, and he's going to come talk about how he's done that and how he makes money and how he runs his business and just all the business side of what he does. He's a very successful guy that really knows his stuff, so it should be good to learn from him. July 7th is our next developers one in here. Topic still up to be determined, I believe.
We're going to talk about, we're going to show people how to build some very simple plugins for client sites and their own sites.
Cool. So, for developers, how to build plugins. Yes, some simple, different plugin ideas for sites and how they're building them.
Right.
Very cool. That'll be good. Week after that, July 14th in the evening, over at the East Cobb Government Center, is Kathy Druin with the 15 most annoying things about WordPress and how to fix them. There you go. And 15 is very precise, I'm sure. 15 meaning 5 to 40. There you go. Awesome. That should be good. July 21st, back in here, Isaac Scheit, who I don't believe is here. He tends to run a little bit late. He'll be talking about advanced custom fields plugin, how to build custom page templates, which sounds complicated, but it's intended for all users. For those that need custom fields and things like that, it can be tricky to develop it. And the advanced custom fields plugin is a great way to do that. So he's going to show you how to use this plugin to develop this kind of stuff without having to write a lot of code. Should be good. The one note there will be across the hall in the small room, just through that door over there, just due to booking reasons. So you may want to RSVP a little bit earlier there, but cap it a little bit smaller to get that happening. And then, of course, those of you chowing down on Tom and Chi, if you're not already, we have lots of Tom and Chi in the back, sandwiches and salads and donuts and all that. So free to have. Thank you to ClickHost for that. And Carl will tell you a bit about him and his business.
Thank you. Do you have the next slide?
There you go.
Yes, we have a number of sandwiches and we have the very healthy cheese donuts. They're really very healthy. My voice is not as cool as Mickey's.
Very cool.
No, it's not as cool. So again, the bowl, put in your business card. Today we're giving away 2 of these cool iPhone connectors. So we have that, and then we have Tom and Chi gift cards. So just drop your business card in there. A couple of things. The one thing I want to mention today is we're starting to host a lot of our more higher-end WordPress sites on Amazon Web Services. So if you have a client that needs some more horsepower, I mean, we're basically competing with the WP engine. So it's faster, more reliable, all the rest of it. We have a couple of sites running on AWS. It's incredible. It's really fast and reliable and very cool. I'm enjoying it. So if you want to know more about that, please see me. And then I really like this topic. because one thing that I think we do really well at ClickHost is around safety. You know, we create 4 backups every day of all our accounts, and we store 6 weeks worth of backups. And we have a lot of our clients that something goes wrong and they say, can you please restore back to a week ago or yesterday, and we do that all day long. So thank you again, and please help yourself with Tom and G.
Get your cards in there. And remind me at the end, because I won't have a slide again. Remind me before y'all leave for us to pull some names out of there and give away those goodies. So today is backing up, updating, restoring your WordPress site. I'm not going to have the Google Slides question thing we did last time. It's cool, we'll do it again, but because half of today will be live, it's going to be a little more haphazard. So do just stop me as we go and ask questions along the way. At any point, we'll certainly have time afterward for some Q&A, but I'd rather this be a little more discussion, so if you have questions or thoughts or whatever along the way, please let me know. And really, I'm going to start with the main points. Really, one thing you need to understand about backing up and restoring WordPress sites to make you so much less scared of it, because it seems like a big scary thing to back up all that stuff. Because you'll get your WordPress sites out. We have plugins, we have themes, we have child themes, and custom CSS widgets, and posts, and pages, and custom post types, and menus, and settings, and all this stuff we need to worry about backing up. And it seems like a pain, like how do you get those, and make sure you get these, and all that. And it's not that complicated at all. At the end of the day, WordPress is really just a bunch of files in a database. You install it from scratch, 1,472 files in one database. As you install plugins, as you write posts, you'll have a few more files, the database will get bigger, but that is your entire site. In that chunk of files, if you zip them up, in that one little database file, that is literally everything. That's all your widgets, that's all your plugins, that's all your posts, that's whatever you have in your site is in there. So you don't need to worry about how do I get those pieces and those pieces. You get your hands on the files in the database. That's your whole site. And that's the main thing you need to understand that can be confusing for a lot of folks. If you give a backup of your site, they'll probably give you a big zip file. And then there's all your files in a database. That's literally it. You don't worry about what goes where. It's just that's everything. So just understand that. We'll show you some ways to deal with the files and stuff. That's the main thing I wanted to try to express that'll really help you. Is, and a lot of people get worried about, well, if I back it up, how do I back up my widgets? How do I back up these other pieces? It's just all right there. As you go, you may have 3,000 files, and your database might be bigger. It's okay. It's cool. If you have all the files and the database, you're good to go. So we'll look at a lot of this stuff as we go live in a little bit, but a few slides just to kind of introduce this. Your file structure, a lot of you, this looks familiar. In WordPress, you basically have 3 folders: WP admin, WP content, WP includes. Excuse me. A variety more files at the bottom. WP admin, it includes you never touch. If something goes wrong in there, you just restore all the original files back to it. Of all the things people do in WordPress that you're maybe not supposed to do, people are very good about not touching the core files they're not supposed to. You won't find, I don't know anyone that messes with that stuff. We all do things like, maybe shouldn't do that, maybe shouldn't do this. No one messes with that stuff. So anything that WP admin or WP includes, if something goes sideways, you just download WordPress again, just blast it on top of it. You don't worry about losing anything. In WP content, that's your main content folder. That one is where a lot of your plugin files live, your theme files live, all your uploads live. That'll have a lot of custom files to you want to be careful about. But really, in general, this is what your files look like. When you get a backup of your site and open it up, you're going to have these 3 folders, a handful of other files out here, and then all your good stuff in here. And really, for your site, you have what's in WP content. You have everything. You have all your stuff. I prefer to have a full pack of everything, just to make it easier just to dump it all on. But if you have a WP content folder in your database that matches up, you can get it restored in a matter of minutes anywhere you want without a whole lot of fuss. Again, we'll dig into that more as we go. Yeah?
Could you talk later or whenever about this HT access? Because one of my clients had a problem and where she's being battered with whatever, and the hosting company had to change the HT access.
Gotcha. So HT access is a little bit, confusing. WordPress generally will build that file for you. It's usually somewhat specific to your hosting, maybe have some security things. But what it does in its core is helps your web server, so to give you pretty permalinks is the main thing it does. So instead of saying, click on our contact page, it's greenmedia.com/page ID equals 57, it's click on our contact page, it's greenmedia.com/contact. And the HT access has some code that helps your server interpret one to the other. Usually if things go wrong in there, you can go to your WordPress to settings and permalinks, and just load that page and WordPress will restore the file back to how it was. But again, if something goes sideways, that's in your backup. So if you need to, you just download the backup when you knew it was good, take that one file out, and we'll show you how in via FTP, just replace that one file on the server,
Okay.
and you'll be good to go. Dealing with the exact syntax in HT Access is a whole different animal. That could be,
Yeah, they were.
actually that could be a good development one maybe for Diana
Yeah, they were
someday.
telling me, take this thing and put it, replace it with this, and it's like, where, what?
Right.
I made them do it in the end.
Yeah, HT Access is a little confusing. I don't want to get into it too much. Diana, seriously,
Okay,
that'd be a
we'll
good
leave
one
that one alone.
to dig
It
into.
would be great if I understood it, all I do is copy and paste.
Right, yeah, it's a lot of, that's most of what we do, is we go, we need this, let's copy and paste it in, yeah.
I just didn't even know where.
And this is where backups are so valuable, because again, different plugins and WordPress will update that to help you out, and sometimes helping you out means crashing your site. So if you have a backup of that HT Access from before, it can be very helpful. Hopefully your host has a copy. We'll get into some of that in a bit. So your database, if you have a database backup, it's a text file called yourdatabase.sql. Excuse me, I'm coughing a lot. I'm on all kinds of meds. But even that, you don't need to get into the database file too much, but if you ever were to open it up, it's really not that scary either. It's not a bunch of mumbo jumbo. The way it does it is when you export your database into a file, it basically writes a file that's ready to import. So if you open it up, it says insert into, and has all the stuff that's going to insert. So when you load the database somewhere else, it just runs all the inserts and kind of builds the database. So if you're going to take it apart and look at it, just a chunk of it, hey, here's WP terms. This is basically categories and tags and stuff. And so I look and, oh, uncategorized, front page article, images, news. You kind of look at it and kind of see, wow, it sort of makes sense. Oh, thank you. Yeah, all right. So I'll have this in my mouth. You won't understand me, well, hope that won't
Oh, it's much better.
There you go. But again, you don't need to play with the database. Typically, and if you have that file, you can restore it. We'll look at some of that in a little bit as well. But again, don't be scared of it. If you say, oh, it's an SQL file, who knows what's in it? If you open it up, it's a huge long file, but it's really pretty straightforward. I mean, it's just inserting all the users and inserting all the posts and all the stuff about your widgets and all the stuff about everything is just in there. It's not a scary thing. The only issue you may have with the database, this is where it's good to have a host that can help you out, is a lot of times you have an upload limit on your site. You can only upload up to maybe a 50 meg file. If you have a site with 10,000 hosts, you may have a 100 meg database. And that is sort of beyond today to figure out how to fix. That's where you say, hey Carl, help me out here. I crashed and I have this thing to back up. And he'll say, great, send it over, we'll take care of it. Or, I mean, in his case, he'll say, we have the same file already backed up, we'll take care of it for you. But that can be an issue on huge sites. But for most of you, that database file is a couple megs, not a big deal. Toss it up there and again. In a few minutes, we'll play with actually doing that live a little bit. So you can see what it looks like. Backups. So we'll sort of hit this first because this should be the first thing you do. Really 3 ways to back up your site. One, let your host do it, which we let our host do it for us. It's all we consider that kind of a secondary backup. I like having my own copies. Just if something goes wrong, I can grab my copy and get to it versus setting up a support ticket and waiting. But if all my stuff is bad, having a good host behind you is awesome. Have a plugin or tool do it. We'll talk about that. Lots of good plugins to help you make backups. And then you can do it manually. We'll show you how to do that as well. We don't manually back up sites very often, but it's good to know how to do that because sometimes you're forced to restore them manually. All these great tools can help you make backups, but if your site completely crashes, that tool's typically not going to be able to help you restore it. You need to do it yourself, talk to your host or whatever. So, all of you right now, if your site's crashed, who's happy with your backup you have? You think you have a good backup? Hands?
You asked if we think we have good backup?
Yeah, you think you have a good backup now if your site goes down?
I better.
Yeah. So out of those, who's ever restored a backup by hand when your site completely crashes? So a handful to put back. Yeah, good number there. So we'll get into some of that because again, restoring is the trickier part of it. Having a backup is great. In the worst case, you can get somebody to help you restore. You say, hey Mickey, help me. Hey Carl, help me. Hey Diane, get somebody to help you. Having it's huge, but being able to restore it yourself is certainly very valuable. A few tools for backups. We'll get into a few of them when we go live in a bit. Infinite WP, I know Carl uses it, I think Kathy still does. Managed WP is the one we use that does good backups. We'll look more closely at that in a bit. Backup Buddy and iThemeSync, I think a few of you used. CodeGuard, we talked about before. CodeGuard is a great way to get backups. The one big advantage with CodeGuard is if your site completely crashes, they can still restore it for you, whereas most of the rest cannot because they need to get to your site and be able to restore it. Then Updraft Plus, I was very surprised. A lot of you guys, show of hands who uses Updraft.
I have used it in the past.
Okay, yeah, Sean, I think you did. Yeah, I saw yours. Nikki Pink is not here, but I know she did. But I saw a handful of folks use Updraft. Really, I haven't looked at it much, but it looks pretty slick. I mean, you guys are happy with it?
Never had to use it yet, so
Yeah.
we'll find out.
There you go. What do you use instead now? You said you used it in the past.
Yeah, it does backup, so you can assign it to backup to Google Drive. So you
Okay.
have all your files there if you need them to do the research. But I switched over to CodeGuard after I met with those guys at WordCamp.
Gotcha.
And just because they give you so many gigs for free, and
Yeah.
I like free.
Yeah, CodeGuard does a good job. Yeah, one neat thing with CodeGuard is you can actually get a free version from them that'll do the backups. You never have to pay unless you need to restore it. Then you pay to restore it. And if you pay, I think they have a plan starting like $5 a month or something to get more features, and they do some neat things going up from there. So restoring from a backup, we'll talk about that in a little bit. But again, the big issue with restoring from a backup is if you have your Updraft or you have your backup buddy or whatever, and your site completely crashes and it's giving error messages, those plugins aren't going to be able to restore it because they need to get in to connect to your site. You need to be able to go to your admin panel to be able to restore your toast. CodeGuard will help you out do that. Hopefully your host will help you if you ever need it. But again, I'll show you easily how to do it manually as well. Because again, even if you use Backup Buddy or Updraft or whatever, you should be able to at least have your backup in hand. Say, great, I have it in hand, and it just takes a couple minutes to restore it manually, so we'll walk through some of that as well. Part of today also is talking about updates, WordPress updates. The why, I think we've covered a lot in the past, but the short version is if a site gets hacked, it's typically because they haven't updated either plugins or core. There's a handful of plugins that cause most of the problem, the Revolution Slider and some of those. If you don't update core, that's always a big problem. I've tried to find some good stats. Everyone has different stats. This says about 83% of hacks are due to WordPress lack of updates on either core or plugins. And that seems to be about the number you see. The majority of hacks are due to that. You have your bad hosts that contribute to the rest. That's why, again, a click host or someone reputable is much better than those that are not as reputable this day. Keeping updated, of course, is huge for that. In most updates that come out from WordPress, I'd say most, maybe half, usually have a bold section that says this is a security release. You know, they're not kidding around, like you probably should load this update, keep things going. And really, updates anymore, it used to be fairly scary, like, oh, I got to hit that update button. Updates anymore almost always are flawless. Always have a backup because they're not always flawless. But if you keep up regularly, if you run 4.5.1, then going to 4.5.2 is not a big deal, it's going to work fine. If you run 3.8 and you try to upgrade, I'd be a little more scared. But if you keep things going regular, updates are not that scary anymore. But again, you always have backups first. And then the question I get a lot when we talk about updates is people say, all right, so should I update my core WordPress or my plugins first? And if you ask that question, you've not been keeping your updates up to date. Is really kind of what that is. Because really, if you have updates, you should do them. There's plugin updates, core update, plugin up, do them as they come along. If you got behind or you inherited a site that got behind, I'd say in general, plugins go first. Because usually as new versions of WordPress come out, plugins have updates in them to get ready for that new version. So if you're way behind in everything, do the plugins so they're all ready, and then do the new WordPress and you should be good. But depending how far out of date you are, that could be a lot of fun, one over the other. But even then, the first thing I do, even if we inherit a site that's way out of date, to get it back up like everything as it is now. So as we update, if it blows up, we can back up, figure out what went sideways, and try again. So that's kind of the look at that stuff. Now we're going to dig in and look at a few things live. And again, please stop me as we go. Yeah, Dave. Yeah, Diana.
Now, there's a good place to say that is exactly why you need to vet your plugins very carefully. Make sure they come from people who are reliable, make sure they're up to date, make sure they've been updated recently, and there are a reasonable number of people who are using it. Because on updates, but on support updates, some of those shadier plugins won't update and they can break things easily.
You're up, exactly. So that's why you should update the plugins first, because the good ones will have made the changes necessary for the new core. But yeah, if you have a plugin that has been abandoned, they've not made changes and they needed to, then when you go and update core, then it all, to some degree, blows up. And we'll show you some ways in a minute here to go in and hopefully just tweak and fix the blow up or if you need to, you can revert back to previous backup. Yeah, very good point there. So let's see here. Let me change my screen around a little bit. All right, cool. There we go. Let me see. A few things I want to look at, but again, I'm kind of counting you guys to ask questions. We'll kind of go where we need to go to answer questions, but I got a couple things to kick us off. My list. I guess the first place we'll look is Managed WP, just because again, this is the one we use, so I'll kind of show you a bit about it. The main thing I want to show you in here is looking here at Shopkins 101. So my daughter's always excited about Shopkins. It's the beauty of WordPress. You can spin up the site for anything you need. She hasn't updated it in a long time though, so if something goes wrong, we break it for a couple hours. Not a big deal. So I figured include them to play with. But inside of here, yeah, I don't want to do this with a client site or anything, but she won't know. So hopefully we don't break anything. But in here, the thing I love most about Managed WP Orion is the backups. I've had issues. We let our clients host anywhere. We encourage them certainly to host in certain places. But if they say, no, I've already paid for 8 years on GoDaddy, but fine. I mean, they're going to fight it, so we just let them stay on GoDaddy. And a lot of the backup plugins don't play well with lesser hosts. They have issues. We talked about it before, but most backup plugins, like the new Backup Buddy, I think may be different, but the older Backup Buddy, BackWP Up, and all those, when you say, hey, back up my site, they say, all right, ready, set, go, 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 go. They have like 30 seconds before the server times out, and hopefully they get it, and maybe they do, maybe they don't, it might break. We find about 80 or 90% of sites work successfully, but for us, that leaves us with like 25 clients that don't back up consistently. With Managed WP Orion and with CodeGuard, I think with the new Backup Buddy Live Stash, it handles backups different, where I don't know all the technical stuff behind it, but instead of like hammering your server, it kind of takes its time and meanders through and kind of says, all right, I've got some backups, and we'll start working on the database a little bit. It doesn't kill your server. It takes it 10 or 20 minutes, but it works on we have 144 sites in here or something. It works on all of them all the time. It's awesome. It's amazing. And the thing I like here, again, I'll just do this. This is not necessarily the best, but and we think it is. But I don't want to shortchange anyone else. One thing I like about this is, we've got to keep restore points indefinitely. So if I appear in Shopkins 101, which is almost silly to have that many, she hasn't blogged since September, so a backup from then is about as good. But I click on View Backups, and I'll have literally all the backups we have going back a long, long way. I click on this calendar to view backups from that day. I say what happened on, it says here's what happened there. It tells me on that day, it was version 4.5.2 with 9 plugins and 28 posts. So I want to download the backup from that day, jump to a different day if I want. And then what's neat in here is I can go into the content and say, just give me that database. See, the database is 1.2 meg. It's not a big deal. Or I just go and say, no, that one day, that one HTXS file. That was the last day the HTXS file was good. I click on Files and just download just that HTXS file. Or just the WP content. I can go in and selectively pull pieces I want from any day I want.
And this is all stored on the site itself?
No, this is stored on the Managed WP servers. This is one downside to them. I think they're starting to open it up, but you can't save it in S3 or Google Drive or whatever. You're saving on their servers, which is good and convenient, but a little out of your control. So you can argue both ways. But again, we look at this as, so far it's been great, and odds are, if somehow we didn't have it there, we have our backup through Carl or through whoever host or whatever. They're starting to make it now where you can say, hey, for this client, have it save the backup over here and give it other places. But we're happy just keeping it there because so far we've done a lot of testing with this, and so far it's been flawless. So it's been awesome so far. And the thing that's neat too with them, if we go back, jump out to the front for a sec here. I can see my backups right here. It tells me all the time what's going on. Every now and then one will turn red where it has an issue, and I'll check it out and say try again, and it'll fix itself. But if something's not backing up, I know about it pretty quick. Brooke lives in here, fitting plugins and all that kind of stuff. She'll see that. So I'm very, very confident it's doing a good job, and every time I've tried to back up, restore, it's worked well. So again, certainly little downsides to it. Pricing on it is very good now. It'll get, in the next few weeks here when they change the new pricing, it's going to get worse for us, but better for most of you. The new pricing is going to be basically free to use for as many sites as you want for updates and plugins and all that kind of stuff. And then you pay, I think, $1 a month for backups per site, and $1 a month for malware scanning, and a few things that are $1 a month. And for us, it works out to like $3 a site, which suddenly is now $500 a month, you know. But I'm happy to pay it. I don't want to tell them that. Don't broadcast it, but
Success.
yeah. What's that?
Right, success.
Exactly. I mean, can't tell you how happy I am with this backup system, just how well it works. But again, there's other systems that certainly do a good job. And if your site is with a decent host, your options open up a whole lot more too, because other backup plugins will work fine too. But for us, letting people host just anywhere they want, hey, it all works there. Go back into here. So I want to go. It has cloning tools and some of that. I don't typically use that. We clone sites manually. Usually just can download the backup and just FTP it up there. I like to have my hands a little dirtier on stuff, but it does have some of those tools. But again, being able to grab any content we want from a certain day is beautiful there. So however you have your backups, hopefully, again, if the key here is if the site's down, we can log in here and get the backups. You don't want to rely on having to go into the dashboard to be able to download your backup, because if your dashboard is down, then you're in big trouble. Yeah.
I have my sites, like, about 10 sites, Backup Buddy,
Okay.
and I don't know, you're making it sound like this could be a better solution.
Well, Backup Buddy is very good. I mean, it's one of the most popular for a reason. Again, the issue with us was we had our 140 whatever sites,
Yeah.
and there were 25 Backup Buddy just would not play nice with. You know, because they were on just crappy little hosting that, frankly, they shouldn't be on, but they've already paid for it, and you know,
You mean like some very small hosting company, or you mean like GoDaddy?
Well,
When you say crappy,
GoDaddy's kind of hit or miss, and then it's usually smaller ones. We have some that are some weird on Birch and some of that
Somebody's
crap.
garage, like
Yeah.
a server in somebody's garage.
Well, we have some clients that are bigger that they insist on hosting their sites in their data center, which is never good. You know, that's not what they do.
Network Solutions is a bad company.
Yeah, network solutions tends to not play nicely.
Huh. A lot of
And,
things.
and the other thing about Backup Buddy is if you're using it, that's fine, but absolutely make sure that you're sending those to a remote location.
Oh, yes, absolutely, yes, I'm
Send
sending
them an
it.
AS3 or
I do
whatever.
Amazon.
Yeah, or even
But now
Dropbox
I
or
need-
anywhere, yeah.
I'm out of the subscription, so I'm at a point where I should make a decision, because now I have an 11th site, so either I pay Backup Buddy for now.
And you can use backups on GoDaddy's managed WordPress, but you have to use it in classic mode. That's the only way.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, I don't think I have.
And if you like Backup Buddy, they have the iTheme Sync now, which is kind of the rest of the
Exactly.
suite.
I'm using them both.
Yeah, so if you use iTheme Sync and it's working well for you, yeah, I would not worry about changing.
Okay.
You know, Dave?
I'm sorry, you're on your managed WP console, right?
Correct.
Okay, I just want
Yeah, I'm at managedwp.com, yes.
okay.
And they have a little plugin that goes in your site, but you don't really use it. It just is there to kind of do stuff behind the scenes, and you ignore it. You do everything in the console. And for,
Okay.
and for us, part of the reason we like this is because we can manage all the plugins across all our clients and all the, you know, all the other stuff. I go to the well, Brooke can. You can see here we got, yeah, across all the sites with one plugin update that's available, a couple theme updates. Can help clean out extra spam. You can just get one click, clean out all the spam comments. Clean out post revisions. It keeps like the latest 5 post revisions. You can say clean out all the rest on our clients to keep the database run better. And then it'll clean up database overhead too, which maybe we'll show you that when we get into it, but because we keep it cleaned out, we go in, there probably won't be any overhead to clean out, but just some little SQL things to help things run a little bit quicker for folks.
And that's looking at all of your clients that you have on managed WP.
Correct. Let's look at the 146 clients that are here, all in one shot, and say, great. All the ones with those spam comments, cool. Select all, optimize. And it'll take it a second. It's going to work through and clean out those spam comments that are in there. And then go further, again, the backups, uptime monitoring. They use Uptime Robot behind the scenes for it, which is free to use. It's currently free in this, but when they add the new system, the uptime monitoring is $1 a site per month, which again is not bad, but I'm not going to pay $150 a month for them to have Uptime Robot on there. I really don't use that much. The issue with it and with Uptime Robot, with a lot of those, is they're too quick to tell you when a site goes down. I end up getting hundreds a day saying your site is down, and by the time I go look, it's back up. So I use one called Port Monitor, port-monitor.com, and I say, hey, check the sites every 3 minutes, and if it's down 3 times in a row, then let me know. Then there's maybe something. I still know within 10 minutes, and I know it's a legit problem, so I can hurry and fix it. versus this is just going to send you stuff all day. It's down, it's up, you know, when you have that many sites, you know, things hiccup here and there. And so I have that, I'm just looking monitor over all the time, but I have it not sending you notifications because it's chaos.
Compare for me, the one you just mentioned to Uptime Robot.
Yeah, so port monitor is the one I mentioned. Uptime Robot, the issue is when it sees your site is down, it says, hey, your site's down.
Right.
And I get dozens of those a day, and almost all of them by the time I go look, oh, the site's back up, a little hiccup. And so then I just get numb to the notifications and miss the real ones, which is not good. So ping them, I think, is actually better, but it's just more expensive. Ping them is the same thing. We say check it often, and if it's down a few times in a row, then let me know. Uptime Robot, all those, if it's down, it lets you know right away.
And so Uptime Robot does not have an editing feature?
Correct, not yet.
Okay.
I mean, with Uptime, you can, the monitoring interval, you can change that. You can make it larger.
Correct.
Instead of a minute, you know, every 3 minutes.
Right.
But it doesn't have the, only after 3 times.
Correct. Yeah, it lets you spread it out more, but it's still, if it sees it down once.
Yeah.
And Pingdom is great, but it's complicated these days. I mean, they've made it.
It is, yeah. And
It's more for enterprises.
but it does do the,
They do.
let me know if it's been down a few times, but it's,
Exactly.
I can't remember the cost, but it was fairly cost prohibitive.
Yeah.
Port monitor, I think we're paying $70 a month to monitor 140 sites, whatever, so 50 cents a month per with the gap in there. It's not great, it's not perfect, but it's pretty good for us. But I still like that this is in here, because in Managed WP, Managed WP you can run reports for your clients saying what's been going on, so I can still say, hey, here's what your uptime's looked like over the past month. You've been up 99.92% of the time. I just don't get the little notifications for the piece where it drops down. They have SEO ranking things and analytics stuff now. I don't have other things we use for that. You can look at comments and reply to stuff into here. We don't deal with that stuff either, but a lot of neat stuff in here. But again, very similar to Infinite WP and iTheme Sync and all that stuff. And by far, the number one reason we use it is for the backups. So, but again, if you have a solution like Claudia, if Backup Buddy's working fine with their iTheme Sync, then cool, there's no problem with that. The Infinite WP, if you've got that working well, it's free once you have it set up. So it hurt to switch from that. Allie was not real pleased and I said, hey, we're going from a free solution to one that's $150 a month, but it's, yeah, I was not going to lose that battle because it's still worth it. But if something else is working for you, then as long as you get a backup in your hand when your site's down, then good. Let's jump into the database for a minute, just look at that. So most of you have cPanel, I would assume, or something similar on wherever you host your site. And inside of cPanel is PHP MyAdmin. So we'll click on that and open up and just kind of poke around in here for a few minutes just to show you what we've got. But this is where you deal. You have that one database file. You'll have that mysite.sql backup file in your hand. That's 2 or 3 megs or 30 megs or whatever. And inside of there, here's how you can restore it by hand super easily. Once this loads in here. So in here, a database called Awesome WP. Shopkins 101 used to be awesomeanna.com, and she renamed it when she got into Shopkins, so I just recycled the site. But inside of here, we've got all our tables and stuff inside of WordPress that those of you that have used it before are familiar with. But again, you don't need to be familiar with this necessarily, because you can just say, hey, wipe it all out and restore this backup file I have. So heck, let's go ahead and do that.
Is this different than FileZilla?
Yes, there's 2 pieces. FileZilla is for your files, PHP Man is for your database. So if you have your database and all your files, again, that's your full site. So we're going to look at both halves. They have to kind of go together. So again, let's go. Things could go sideways here, but again, she's not online today. She won't care. So that's what I'm picking her up in Columbus this afternoon, so I'll have to have it fixed by then. So yeah, so let's grab a copy for database. Yeah, she didn't pay for hosting anyhow, so she can deal with it. So we'll give it a sec here. All right, so our database is ready, so we'll download it. Give it a sec here. All right, and put it in a zip file for us. There's our awesomewp.sql. We'll just set it on our desktop here. All right. So I've got this awesome WP. So that's her whole database right there. The files we won't mess with for now, but we'll play with some of that in a minute. But if we go back in here now, so here's her database. If I were to click on Awesome WP here, you can kind of get a different view and see everything's going on. Here's on the right-hand side, the overhead. That's what Manage WP can help clean up a little bit. That's just when a database is working a lot, it can kind of leave some junk behind it doesn't need. Doesn't really matter for most of us, but if you have a client with 20,000 posts, that overhead can become a lot, and keeping it cleaned up can help, but not a big deal there. Here's all her tables. The only time you really ever would need to go in here is maybe 2 reasons. We'll look at those real quick. One is the WP options table, because if you were to change hosts or change domain names and forget to update it before you change, you won't be able to log in on the new one because it thinks it's going to keep trying to go back to your old site. And so in here, there's site URL. So the very first one, if you just edit that, you can, in PHP Admin, you can edit things. Say, oh yeah, it's not Shopping 101, it's something else. You can edit it here, and then suddenly you'll be able to log in again. It's rare you'll need to do that, and most migration plugins will fix that for you along the way, but if you screw up, we've done it occasionally, like, oh, let's just hop in there and fix it. It's easier than redoing everything again a different way. The other one you may get into at some point is the users table. If you've inherited a site, you have the files in the database, but they have no idea what usernames or passwords they have, you can go in here and look at the user table, and what I'll typically do is just edit the email address to be mine, and then go do a password reset on the front, because that sends it back. Because the way WordPress works in any decent user management system out there, is your database is not there, your password is not stored in the database. I assure you, I don't type in all that when I log in for my password. The way it works, it's really pretty brilliant. Any of these systems use encryption to save your data, your password. So what happens if you say, my password is Mickey? It says, great, it encrypts it into this big, long, crazy string. That every time you type in Mickey, it turns into this long thing, but there's no system out there, in theory, that can do it backwards. There's no way to turn it back into Mickey. Even hackers typically can't do that. So what happens is I type in, my password is Mickey, and it saves it as $P, this whole long mess. When I go to log in again, I say, hey, my password is Mickey. It converts that long mess and say, hey, is that the same long mess that's in there? Oh, you must have typed it right, and it lets you in. So the cool thing is if someone were to hack into your site, they can't get your password. It really works well. The way hackers do get around this is a thing called rainbow tables, where basically they generate billions and billions of passwords using that and see what all the results are, and then they can match them up. And then they say, oh, that long string, let's look up on our table. Oh, that's Mickey. So hackers have ways around it, but for the most part, if someone gets to your site and they can't get it, it also means if you're back here, you can't just change the password either. There are sites you can go to generate that hash and stick it in, but again, if you get stuck on something and say, I just need to get in here, just go in and change the email address to something you control, and then go try to log in on the front and say, hey, I forgot my password, it'll email to you now, and you're in. You're good to
You
go.
actually can change the password, did you know that?
Well, there's ways to be able to generate the...
No, you don't.
Really? What do you do?
Go into one of them,
Okay.
it's very easy actually.
All right, cool.
Take that and type it in plain text, what you want it to be.
Okay.
Now go over to the left, to the little box, the drop down there,
Okay.
MD5,
Oh, gotcha. Interesting. Okay.
and I'll save it.
And then when I save it, it'll
It
do that.
encrypts it again.
Oh, there you go. Okay. So
This is MD5 encrypt.
you guys are very cool. Never knew that.
That's a handy thing to do.
Yeah, it is. That's nice. Very good.
Yeah, very, very cool. So then you reset
Right.
admin, for example.
Yeah, and the way I've done it before occasionally is there's other sites you can go and say, hey, turn this into an MD5 for me and then paste that in, but this is the shortcut to do
But
that.
it does it right.
Because again, going forward in MD5, it's saying it's not a secret on what happens, it's just that no one can do it in reverse, so it works out well. Linda?
I didn't know if you wanted a piece of candy.
Oh, no, I'm okay for now, thanks. I've got my drink still, so
Okay.
I'm just talking a lot, it's all right.
And so that was convert to the encrypted stuff when you click save.
When I click save, cool, gotcha, very cool. I didn't know that. That's a handy little tip. But what we'll do here,
Mickey, what is an MD5?
MD5 is a type of encryption.
Oh.
It's an MD5 hash. It's just saying every time you type in hello, it turns into this big mess. MD5 is just the kind of the
And that's the
process
one
that does that.
that's commonly used for this.
Right. Yeah, for this kind of thing.
Not common, it's always.
Okay.
The MD5 is used for most of all this stuff. The other piece that, and it's getting, I guess, getting in the weeds a little bit, but I think WordPress allows you can add a salt in your WP config, and that says take this thing and then put in this random character and then create the MD5. Is that way it kind of breaks all the rainbow tables people have against it. But it's
Does
yeah.
anybody do that on a regular basis?
Change their song?
Change their songs.
Oh, yeah, I do it like in half.
Well, that
Websites
makes,
and
well, that makes
that,
sense,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
I mean,
I
like
Not
out
really.
of the box, when you set up a new install, you don't create new songs. Thank you.
no, you probably should. Carl probably would think
Oh, I
you should.
On a new install, you
Yeah.
can?
But again, I figure at this point, if someone's into my database, they're in pretty far. The fact that I know my raw passwords is pretty good. That's the least of my concerns of whether it's salted or not. I've got to figure out how they got into my database and did all that. Well, let's look at our whole database again here.
I was just reading something.
Let's go back up here. So we're going to do something you should never do. We're going to select all the tables, and I'm very sure I'm on the right site here. Cool, and drop them. So the database, dropping tables means delete them. So now there is no database on this site anymore. If you go to Choppy Luna one,
Like, screen them down.
yeah, it should just say database error now, I think. Let's take a look. I may have caching on it too, but that's okay. So there's no tables. So, it's not good. If you remove a host, you may get this. You know, when we manually migrate sites, this is what we do. We set up the database and we go in and says, hey, there's nothing here. It's really easy in here again with the right size file. You click on import and choose our file. And here's awesome WP SQL. And go. It'll take just a sec. It's a relatively small file. Relatively slow connection, so it'll take a minute. Here's on the corner, we're at 88%, so there we go. Just finish uploading and take a second to load. And once it does it, there we go, successful. And everything's back and working now. So if you have a backup of your database, it's really that easy. Just kind of wipe out what's there, import the new one. You should be good to go. Again, there are hiccups that could come up. If it was an old database from an old server, there could be some issues. If it's a huge database, there could be issues, but 99% of the time, if you click import and give that file, it says, great, no problem, all set. And again, if you have a decent host and it's not working right, you say, hey Carl, I'm having issues, here's my database backup, there's my database, you guys please restore it, and they can do some things on the server to help you out. But to the extent possible, I like to be able to control my own stuff, because again, Carl, any host is relatively quick in getting back to me, but it's still a couple hours to get to them and see what's going on versus get it done and get it fixed and get it back up and running, without wasting a lot of time. Yeah.
Mickey, in manually backing up, I back up the files and the database.
Yep.
If I'm using Managed WP or Backup Buddy, it's
It will do all.
it's backing up everything.
Exactly.
Correct.
Yep. So that's the other side. If you wanted to manually back up your database for whatever reason, and again, we occasionally, not as much anymore, but we'd have to go in. Susanna, because we were on InfoWP when we had Susanna, she would have a list of like 10 sites to go in weekly and manually back up. She has to manually back up the database. So to do that, is just hitting export at the top. And different PHP admin versions are different, but hey, there we go. Hit go. It's going to back it all up and it's saving us a little file at the bottom. That's going to be a couple megs, and there we go. There's our SQL file. Go put that away somewhere safe. If you ever need to, you can go import, bring it back. It's really, really not that bad if it comes down to it. The other side, of course, is the files, and that's where you'll probably spend more time. We really do relatively little playing in here with stuff. It's an odd situation to have a bad database or whatever. Really, the only time we typically are in here is if we're moving a site. Again, I like to move sites manually, so I'll take all the files and upload them, take the database, import it here, change what I need. And that's really about the only time. But we spend a lot of time in FileZilla. So let's go spend a few minutes in there and see what's going on. So FileZilla, there's certainly other FTP software out there. FileZilla is typically the most popular. It's as good as anything else. The only downside to be careful of is it's very reputable, good software. When you download it, it comes with toolbars and crap that it should not be coming with in 2016. So just be careful when downloading and installing it, that you don't get extra stuff. Not viruses, but just junkware that just,
Yeah, and we can just be careful where you download it because it's so popular. People think they're downloading FileZilla, but it's.
Yeah, FileZilla-project.org, I believe, is the official address.
Yep.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, any popular software, you'll find it elsewhere bundled with very bad things. So make sure you get it. And one of the reasons I went to FileZilla is they have a Windows version, they have a Mac version, whatever. They have a portable version too, though, meant for putting on a USB stick. What we did instead is we installed that in Dropbox. And so I don't actually have Windows version of FileZilla on my computer. I have the Windows version installed in Dropbox, meaning I have a shortcut on my desktop here, a shortcut on my desktop at home, a shortcut on my desktop at work. So whenever I want to access, they're all accessing the same shared version, meaning when I add a new client to whatever, they're all in here and they all stay synced. I don't say, oh, I added them at home, but I got to add them in here so I can have it. It works out very well for that. And then there's ways, I don't remember how to do it, Ashley can probably help you. But Ashley and them had Macs, and so they installed it on Mac, and it said, hey, but find the reference file for the people over here in Dropbox. And so we all stay synced with all the same clients and stuff, which is very, very handy. And again, it's sort of an automatic backup.
And Mickey, didn't you tell me that you do not update your portable version?
Right, because every time we have it, it blows up. So it says, hey, there's a new version. We say, no, boom. I'm sure you could, I don't know, but we've done it before, it blows up, and this one works fine, so.
Yeah, that's been my experience too, so now I'm scattered again.
Right, yeah, so it's, a little weird there. So FileZilla, I talk a lot about Chromebooks. I love Chromebooks. We have 3 in our house now in Chromebox and all that. They're great. And I can do almost everything I want on them, but one big exception is right here. And I've still not found a good solution. There's some Java-based FTP stuff, but really if you need FTP files, you need Windows or Mac. I can do literally, I think, everything else in my life on a Chromebook. And I love it, it's great. Cannot do this and still not find a good solution. So this will keep me tethered to Windows a bit longer. But so yeah, here's FileZilla in a nutshell. For those of you who have not used it before, there's a lot going on, but really here's stuff on your computer, here's stuff on the server you're looking at, here's kind of just the technical stuff, what's going on, and here's what it's ready to do next. And so really it's just find stuff on your computer and drag it to the server, or find stuff on the server and drag it to your computer. It's really where you spend most of your time. So we'll look, I am connected here to good old Shopkins 101 again. And so most hosts, when you log in on the remote server, all your stuff is stored in a folder called public HTML. There's different folders. You have to know what the case is for yours. But if we were to go into there, no, I connected a while ago. It's lost its connection here. Reconnect. There we go. So in public HTML. So again, we've got basically our main CG admin comes with hosting. You can erase or whatever. You basically have your 3 main folders. We talk about WP admin, content includes, and then all the other WordPress stuff kind of baked into there. Really, again, you have your HT access that you may need to deal with. We talked a little bit about your WP config that has some of your settings in it, and then everything else is in WP content. If something goes wrong with the site, one of the first things we'll do if we say, "What? This is acting weird, it's throwing these weird errors," we'll just restore all the other WordPress files on it first and see what happened. And so, in our case, in Google Drive, we keep a folder in here called, just lost it, get back here, called WordPress, where we keep copies of various files we might need here on the left, but also the latest copy of WordPress and the latest copy of WordPress without WP config and some of those other files with it. So that way any of us can just, we don't have to go download it again, uncompress it, or whatever. We have it just sitting handy, ready to go. So if Shopkins 101 was having some issues and I'm like, not sure what it's doing, one of the first things I might do is just grab this no content, say, hey, take all these files, and I won't actually do it because my connection's so slow, but highlight them and just drag them all over. It's going to replace all the WP admin, all the WP includes all the core WordPress files that you should never touch anyhow, and just make sure one didn't get corrupted or hacked or what might have been the case there.
So that's not gonna overwrite any,
Correct.
because they're not,
Because it's all files you shouldn't touch anyhow, so yeah. And that may or may not fix your problem. The one thing that's neat to do in here that you may do is if you update a plugin, or say we update Core, like Daniel was talking about earlier, we update Core and all of a sudden our social media widgets plugins now has a big error across the top of the screen because they haven't updated in 2 years. But now we can't get into the site to take it out either. We just get rid of that stupid old plugin. We can fix it, but we can't get in there to take it out. FileZilla makes it super easy to do that. You go to WP Content and Plugins. It's where all your plugins on your site live. So we don't have a whole lot here. You can either delete the plugin here, just delete it, and then it'll be off your site and you can get back in, or what I'll often do is just rename it to something else. You can just edit it here. I'll put like an X at the end or something, or at the beginning. I meant to put it at the end, but either way, rename it that, and WordPress will say, hey, I don't recognize this plugin, and it'll essentially disable the plugin and let you in that way. And then you can kind of deal with what you want to do and rename it back later without having to delete those. Diana?
Does that really work?
Yeah.
Don't you have to, change the plugin name?
No, if you change the folder, it loses track, but it thinks it's a different plugin now.
Really?
So what it'll do is if you do, well here, let's do this. Let's say WordPress SEO is causing issues. So we'll rename it WordPress SEO XX. And we'll go to Shotguns 101 here. And when we log in now, it's going to say, hey, I've disabled the WordPress SEO plugin because I don't know where it is anymore.
You just rename it.
But then it could cause, I'll show you, there's another hiccup that it could cause. I'll show you that while we're in here as well. But again, if it's the case where it's this old social media plugin you know you're not going to use, then you just delete it and not worry about it either.
Right.
Log in here. This is HostGator hosting this site, just so if it's slow, don't blame Carl. It's actually probably T-Mobile's fault, really, because they're not as fast here as Verizon. But I guess while it's loading, I'll explain. So what will happen is when we get in, it's going to say, hey, WordPress SEO is gone. We've disabled it now, and it's disabled. But if we go into the plugins, we'll see it's there again, turned off, because it's going to say, hey, I see it now. But it thinks the real one is now in that WordPress SEO -XX folder. So I've reactivated, it's going to reactivate it off that new fake folder name and cause some issues. I'm not sure what's going on here. I don't want to waste too much time there, but yeah, so renaming it. So if you have an issue where you can't log in, you know it's because of the plugin, the quick fix is just rename it or delete it here. I mean, heck, I can just delete it. WordPress SEO is easy enough to download again and reload later. Do that, then you can get back into your site, see what's going on. You know, most of the time, if you upgrade and there's an issue, you don't need to revert to a backup. Typically, it's just that one stupid plugin that didn't update. You can just hop in this way and fix it, and then move on with your life from there. But I'm not sure why our folder didn't want to load there. It ever did. Yeah. Still thinking about it. Cool, let's see. Yeah, that's the main thing I'll do in here is, and usually I often load new plugins through this way too when we're adding a new site. We keep a copy of a lot of the plugins we like to use. We try to keep it updated pretty well. So I'm adding a new site, I want push press, and I want redirection, I want relevancy, whatever I want, I just kind of drag them over and upload versus searching for them and adding them through the front end, which, I mean, it works out the same either way, but if we're loading a new site, that can be kind of handy to do that way. Oh, here we go, we're finally in our dashboard here, so let's go ahead and do this again. Rename that back to the XX. Go to plugins. And now it's going to say, yep, plugin WordPress SEO has been deactivated due to error. Plugin file does not exist. But you'll notice though, if we look down here, Yoast SEO indeed is still in here. But if we were to activate it, it would activate it, the one in the XX folder, which then will screw us up later when we try to do updates and can get kind of weird. So I wouldn't do that. But the problem is now if I rename it back, it's not going to magically reactivate. It's disabled it, it's disabled for now. So now we'll go back in. I'll refresh this page just to make sure it's seeing the right one again. And now I'll go back down and reactivate it. So in your case, whatever the issue was, deal with it, reload the plugin. Now we know. Excuse me, we're good to go.
I use the same method to disable all plugins.
Okay, rename the plugins folder.
Yeah, when you're troubleshooting and you're trying to narrow it down, is it a plugin issue or a theme issue?
Yep, there you go. So you can do the same thing. If we go back up a level here, if you want, you just take this plugins folder and just rename it to plugins disable or XX or whatever you want. Rename to anything in WordPress. Say, oh, there's no plugins. And so yeah, if you're not sure what's going on, you do that. That eliminates plugins as an issue. If the problem's still there, got problems still there, well, let's turn it back on. Or did the problem go away? Cool. And then, yeah, often what I'll do, if I say it's a plugin, but I have 50 plugins on the side, I don't know which one, you can just kind of start going through and say, oh, let's see. Is it a Kismet? Yeah, XX. And let's go check it out. Oh, it fixed it, didn't fix it, whatever. Yeah, we can kind of work through that way.
And the the good thing about disabling plugins this way as opposed to in your control panel is that some of them, when you disable them, will destroy their data.
Yes.
If you do it this way, the Yoast tables and all that stuff is still there.
Right.
All the data's there when you reactivate the plugin. I don't know that Yoast does it, but some of them, like WordPress, I think, will delete all of its data if you deactivate.
Gotcha. And some, even this way, when you deactivate and it says it's gone and deactivates and reactivate it later, you will have to go set some stuff back up. So it can be, you could be in for a longer day regardless if you kill them all this way. But if you're into this, you're probably in for a long day anyhow trying to figure out why the site's crashed. So at least you've got a good setup here.
It's not a good day because you never do this on your calendar.
Right, yeah, this stuff's never calendared, so yeah, very good point. But yeah, if we have, I mean, really that's about it. I was going to say the other piece is if you did have a backup of your stuff, your backup files, your zip files, would look something like this. This is just basic WordPress, but it would have admin content includes all that stuff going on the left. If you say, all right, I just want to restore all the stuff from that backup, you just highlight everything, drag it across, and it'll say, hey, do you want to overwrite everything over there? You say yes, and give it 5 minutes, 10 minutes, depending on the size of the site and your host. I will say it's a quick host, but Carl's trying to explain it to me, I don't know why. His FTP is the fastest of any host in the world by far, like by a factor of 10. It's almost like it's a bug, but don't ever fix it, because when I upload files, you can tell when you're on ClickHost, because it just loads them all up.
We have a direct pipe from your office.
Okay, well, that works. Hey, I'll take it. But it's kind of nice when I'm having to do a bunch of stuff, It's nice on ClickHost, I can do that and just, it flies. But even others, if we have major update like WordPress 4.6 when it comes out, we tend to do a lot of manual upgrades just to make sure things are good. And that can take some time. You take all the files and upload them, and it's going to take it 5 or 10 minutes. So that's where between Brooke and I, you just upload it, have it start going, and then, cool, minimize that, work on some other stuff for a while, write a blog post, do whatever you need to do, and then eventually meander back and say, oh, the upload's done, now let's go check it out. It can be a slow process at times, but again, if you're stuck in a site, I guess, in conclusion, as it were, if you're stuck, if you have that database, you can put in PHP admin restore, give the files, you can here, and that is everything. That's all your widgets, that's everything, and you're good to go. So, if you have further questions, we'll be sticking around for a bit. We can walk you through some stuff. You want to set up FileZilla and you don't know how to set that up, we can walk you through some of that. I'll be here, Ashley will be here, Diana, certainly, Kathy, whoever, Carl will be around to do that. Carl, you want to draw some names?
Let's do it.
Pick some winners here.
It's right over there.